Hi folks, Chris Martin here. Happy New Year! I'm back with another edition of Diplomacy Academy. Today I'm going to address a question asked by one of my patrons. How do you effectively negotiate from a position of weakness? How do you get your opponents to change their minds when they have the tactical advantage? Let's break that down a little bit. To my mind, there are three main situations when you find yourself needing to negotiate from a position of weakness. In the opening game, you could be on the short end of your theater, whether you're an England being sea lioned by France and Germany, or Turkey getting piled onto by all three of your neighbors. You find yourself in the position where you have to convince them to change course. In the mid-game, the other side of the board has resolved and they're heading your way. You might be Germany when suddenly Austrian, Italian, Russian armies show up in your homeland, or you might be Italy with France flooding into the Med and Germany heading down south with armies. Or you might be a rump England or Turkey trying to convince your neighbors that if they take the time to finish killing you, they're going to get eaten from behind. The third scenario, where you might find yourself negotiating from a position of weakness, is of course the endgame, when larger powers are contesting for either a smaller draw or a solo victory. That's when you have to convince them that your ideas are worth more to them than your dots. And that's the scenario that we are going to look at today. The main thing that inspired me to focus on the endgame for today's video on negotiating from a position of weakness was the artillery arms scenario, which I came across. It was posted by Diplostrats, and I'm going to give you a link to it right here. If you want to kick over, check it out. I'll wait. And you definitely should check it out. In this scenario, you are Turkey. You are stuck between Italy and Germany, both at 15 centers. And you have to convince them to take a three-way draw right now. If you can't do that, they'll either eliminate you and take a two-way draw, or one of them will get a solo. So the puzzle, as they put it out there, is how do you do this? What arguments do you bring to the table? What is it that you tell to each of them that convinces them to take the draw now? It's an elegant problem, and I'll break down the answers a little bit later, as far as, the answers that I came up with. But right now, I want to instead say that there are three things in general that you as a negotiator want to bring to the table when you are having these conversations as the weaker power. The three things you want to bring to the negotiation in the end game, when you don't have the upper hand, are passion, arguments, and cool. These are tools you always want to have for negotiations, but in the end game, when you don't have the upper hand, they are super important. Now I'm going to draw some examples as I walk through what I'm talking about here from the 2014 This American Life episode, Got Your Back. David Hill brought Ambassador Dennis Ross to DixieCon as his personal advisor for the first round, and I was on that board. And I ended up negotiating a six-way draw as a one-center Italy. Talk about a position of weakness. Passion. Your game is on the line. You have fought for hours to get to the end game and still be a factor. You need to demonstrate to the people you're negotiating with that not only are you serious, but that your arguments matter. You can't be so laid back about it that they just are going to do whatever they want to do anyway. You have to make an impression. And the best way to do that is to bring energy to the table. If you're going to threaten to throw a solo, they have to believe that you are going to throw that solo, or you're going to have to put up or shut up. And wouldn't you rather they believed you and you could just get the draw? When you bring your arguments, you got to bring them with passion. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. You're going to hold us hostage to a possible point where you knock us down to here. No, look, they cut me out. I don't care. No, shut up. I'm going to talk, okay? You're going to hold us hostage for 5 hours while you grind down, and you still can't cut us out, right? Because there's a 13 center stalemate line that all of us can get behind. I think you get a sense of the energy that I was bringing there. I was a one-center power. I had no influence with the order that I would write. But because I could negotiate and I could work with the other people on the board around me, I was able to make them listen to me. And I would have been easy to ignore if I hadn't really been forcefully making the point that I had something to say that was worth listening to. Now, it's very important, of course, that I had something valuable to say. And that takes us to our next point. Arguments. In this negotiation, your job is to marshal the best arguments that you can that can convince them that the things that you're going to do with your dots are better for them than the things they would do with those dots if they were theirs. Because, hey, if you would just give them your dots, you wouldn't even need to have this conversation. But you're not going to do that. What you're going to do is you're going to find the lever that's going to convince them that they're going to get a better result with you than without you. Now, in sometimes that means you're going to have to threaten to throw a solo to somebody else. Sometimes you'll threaten to throw the solo to them if they keep you alive until somebody else is dead. A plausible thing that you might want. Now, obviously your goal is to not have to throw them that solo, or in my opinion, it should be your goal. Maybe that's really what your goal is at that point, is just to punish somebody else's bad behavior. But my point is that if you don't have reasonable, rational, on the board, executable arguments to convince them that they are going to get a better result out of the game by listening to you than not listening to you, then boy, you got a big hill to climb. Because then you have to make an appeal to their basic humanity. To say, please, please don't kill me. I deserve to be in this draw because I'm such a nice guy. And that isn't always going to work out for you. And even if it does, it can come back to bite you in the butt. Funny story. In one of my first tournaments ever, I was getting clobbered. I was getting pushed out of the game. And I came to the guy who was attacking to me. And I said to him, look, man, I drove all the way down here to this tournament. I just want to play diplomacy. Can you please just take your foot off my neck? I'll keep working with you. I won't hold it against you. Just let me live and play. And he did. And I turned my position around and I got into the draw at the end. And so then what did I do? Did I go back to him and say, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. No, I didn't do that because I was an idiot. What I did was go to him and say, wow, man, can't believe you fell for that. I'd have killed me in an instant. And funny end of that funny story is that he didn't work with me again for about 10 years after that. And he never told me that that's what was in the back of his mind, not until years later. But he absolutely was like, oh, that guy, I can't listen to anything he says. He's just using me. So don't be that guy. And if you are that guy, don't let him know that you're that guy. Don't be like that. The third thing is cool. You gotta keep your cool. Yes, your game is on the line. Yes, you fought for hours to get here. You've marshaled your arguments and you've presented them passionately. But don't take that too far. It's really easy to get so caught up in the argument of the moment that you go across the line and you find yourself railing against the person you're talking to, calling them an idiot or a fool for not listening to you. I've been there and I've seen it happen way too often, and I can tell you it does not work the way you want it to. If you get to that point, you've really lost it already, because you've lost your inner cool that is confident that they are going to listen to what you have to say. Even if in that moment they're telling you no, okay, let it go. Then go ahead and execute on your threat. Go ahead and talk to the other person. Take your arguments to someplace else. Because if you find yourself in that place where you are so emotional, if you're on tilt, as it were, then your negotiating partner can read you. And they know what you're going to do. And if they know what you're going to do, that totally gives them the upper hand. Here's what Ambassador Ross had to say about staying cool in negotiations.
They're going to read it. You know, when I was negotiating, I could read the body language. I could tell if someone was really nervous. I once had in one negotiation, I explained to somebody what it is we needed, and it was clearly way beyond what they thought we were going to go for. And my first impulse was looking at this person, this guy should never play poker. Mm-hmm. I mean, he literally blanched. So, you know, the other thing is, you got to be cool.
That really nails it. And the end game, what you're doing so often is about brinksmanship. It's about saying, I am going to make something so unpleasant happen that you have to accept my terms. And if you're nervous, or if you don't believe that you're going to do it yourself, or if you're so angry that you're going to do it no matter what they say, well, you've lost that negotiation. You got to keep your cool as you go into that. And if they say, no, I'm not going to accept your terms, then you got to be willing to coolly execute on your threat. Now that brings us nicely back to this endgame scenario, the artillery arms scenario, over on YouTube. And you can also check out the threat on playdip.com, which I will put a link to right here. I'll wait for a moment. You go check that out. Okay, welcome back. So the key here, as you can tell, is that you've got a 15 center Germany and a 15 center Italy. Now, how are you going to negotiate this? The first thing you've got to realize is that Italy only needs time. There are no stalemate lines that are going to prevent him from forcing the Black Sea and then forcing Sev. So he's going to be able to get those 3 dots to get to 18. But this season, and this year only, it's a spring turn in the scenario, right? There are so many potential moves for you to throw that 3rd dot to Germany that Italy ought to take you seriously. It should be obvious to Germany that it's in his best interest to take a 3-way draw here rather than go for a 2-way draw, because you can say that if you don't do exactly what I say right now, I'm going to throw the solo to Italy. And obviously you can throw the solo to Italy. No question about that. From the Italian side, it's a little bit less clear. There are lots of moves that could throw the game to Germany, but all of those moves can be blocked. So Italy has to guess correctly. And the question that Italy has to balance in his mind is, what are the odds that I'm going to guess right? You have to bring a passionate argument to Italy that lays out the different ways that you could throw the game to Germany. And you've got to say to him, look, you don't know what I'm going to do. You don't know what Germany and I are going to go to do together. We're going to work out our orders if you don't take a draw right now. And then you got to be willing to follow through on that. The 3 things that you've got to bring at the end of the game when you're negotiating and you're the weaker power. Passion. Bring the energy. Make them listen to what you have to say. Arguments. Have something to bring to them that explains how you're the person who's going to get them a better result than they're going to get otherwise. You're going to get them to a better draw. You're going to not throw a solo to somebody else. You're going to throw them a solo, but later. Whatever you've got, bring those arguments to the table and make them understand that working with you is better than killing you. And if you've got nothing and killing you would clearly be the right choice, go ahead and make an appeal to their heart and say, look, I'm fun to play with. We're going to have a great time. Just keep me around a little bit longer. Who knows? Things can change. The third thing is, keep your cool. Even though it could mean your death if you don't get this right, keep that on the inside. Maintain your confidence. Don't fly off the handle emotionally, and don't get so upset about what's going on that you just walk away with your head hanging down in despair. That's what happened to David Hill.
Eventually my ally, a high school math teacher named Brian, ended up stabbing me. He watched me go to the mat with the other players to defend him, then he chopped me out of the game for a few extra points. I was incredulous. I pulled him aside and asked him why he sold me out. He said, I guess I'm just a hard motherfucker like that, and turned and walked away.
That's it for this Diplomacy Academy. I hope you've enjoyed it. Give me a like if you liked the video, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more about diplomacy. If you've really liked what I've done here, go ahead and check me out on Patreon. Until next time, I'm Chris Martin, and I'll stab you soon.